What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to episode number 252 of the VK Bros with Jason and Alex Von Cannell. Again, big show, as usual, this week, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a couple of things I just want to start off with, and then Alex wanted to do something quick on Bitcoin. First things first, this is some sort of breaking news that's just come out in the last few hours. Congratulations to One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts, who has retained his Senate seat. Commiserations to our boy Jared Rennick, who lost his, unfortunately.
Who did he lose it to, do we know?
So I know there were 6 Senate seats available in the Queensland Senate race. Labor got 2, LNP got 2, the Greens got 1, and Malcolm Roberts got 1. So I would say, I think Labor picked a seat up.
You said it's Queensland?
Yeah, that's just Queensland Senate seats. There's 6 seats available. I think Labor picked up an extra seat. Yeah, right. Which sort of makes sense in light of how well they did in the election. But fear not, because I know that he is committed to his People First Party, and he is planning on building it into a real mainstream party. So he's setting up branches and all those sorts of things. So if you do want to support Jared Rennick, follow him on all of his socials, and he will tell you what to do.
He did say the wrong thing this week. He's been on the wrong side, which is him railing against Bitcoin. It's not a fight. I've heard his views on it. We covered it on the show. He's wrong about it. But I also appreciate what he's trying to do. So he can't accept it because the plan that he wants to make is like a different financial system thing as well. And he can't afford to have people go and jump into something that's non-Australian sovereign.
Yeah. Essentially, I think his main problem with it is that Australians investing money in Bitcoin does not build a better Australia. It builds a better future for those Australians as the value of the Bitcoin increases over time, but it doesn't actually go into investing into the country itself and improving it.
But it's a weird vector to take too, because nor does your house. Because he keeps saying Bitcoin won't feed you. Neither does your house.
Yeah, and look, I don't think he's a big fan of the housing Ponzi either.
But you can't attack Bitcoin if you're not going to attack what everyone puts their money in Australia.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. So
it's a fight that he should just drop it. He should
for sure.
it.
That's definitely a miss. So, I mean, he's like 95 out of 100 as far as his takes on things, but you're allowed to have some things that we disagree on, and but that was an oversight and a miss. And look, hey, him losing a seat, he might educate himself, and you never know, he might come back next Senate race and have different views on it, because people are allowed to change their views on things in light of new information. Second thing I just quickly want to say, a little funny personal story. My eldest son, who is 5 and in prep, is all of a sudden obsessed with Pokemon cards.
Right.
Absolutely obsessed. And his whole school is. Like, Pokemon cards are like cigarettes in prison at his school. It is insane how well they've caught fire. And it's great for me as a parent, because I was a massive Pokemon fan as a kid. It was the first major purchase I ever made with my own money. I bought myself a Game Boy Color and Pokemon Blue. And I actually credit that game with me being learning to read quickly, which you guys get to benefit from on this show, because it was a text-based game. So if you wanted to continue through the game, you had to be able to read to know what the hell was going on. Otherwise, you couldn't continue through the game. So I've actually been using Pokemon cards as like a vector to get Nate more interested in reading, because obviously you've got to be able to read the names and what the cards do and all those sorts of things. So I'm going to throw it out there to all of our listeners who are of the same generation as us. You guys are probably, some of you, especially you blokes, were probably Pokemon fans when you were younger.
I wasn't.
Yeah, I know you weren't, but I was. Because you weren't cool, bro. It's still cool now. 20 years later. 30 years later. So calling all fans of the show...
While Jason was playing Pokemon on his Game Boy, I was playing Unreal Tournament and Quake 3 Arena.
I was playing those games too. They were also fun.
How many first-person shooters are you playing right now?
The Elder Scrolls
Loser!
Oblivion.
Loser!
That's a first person.
Not first person. No.
You can shoot fireballs. Dude, hey, come talk to me when you finish Doom Eternal, alright? You can't even finish Doom Eternal. I've finished it because you're not good enough.
So hard. Well, that's only because I've been playing World War II stuff, And so playing World War II games and then trying to get into the pace of the Doomslayer.
Yeah, I know, you can't handle it. You can't handle it, mate. But that's also my playing style. Like, I'm a run and gun type player when it comes to first-person shooters. That's why I hate your games. They require far too much patience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hold on. You're an RPG guy. That's patience.
Yeah,
I'm going to go harvest a field for 9 hours to get grapes that I can sell for myrrh and to build my magic, my mana stores. And if I run for 14 hours, then I'll be a level 6 run.
Hey, Alex, can you stop? I don't want to get this hard right at the start of the show.
Did I send you a thing? I don't know if you've seen it. It was on Instagram. They did a study about, a group got together and showed their kids 90s and noughties cartoons as opposed to the new ones.
Right.
And the results were like better sleep patterns, better behavioural issues, because the pace is much slower.
Correct.
Whereas these new ones are just like click, 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 like
it's a real problem. Like I read a study once about that show Cocomelon. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Of course I haven't.
A lot of the parents listening will have heard of it, and that's like the worst show for kids' attention spans because it's like deliberately they won't show you the same scene for more than like I think 7 seconds is the maximum that they'll show you the same
to
scene.
make you addicted to it.
Everything is bright colours. Everything is it's like poker machines. Like it's bright colours, it's fast movement, it's repetitive, rewarding noises. Like it's literally hijacking dopamine.
And we all know that blue light at nighttime is making you retarded.
Yeah, it's terrible for you because it destroys your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the Pokemon cards. For any of the viewers or listeners of the show, we often say, please support us with your time, talent, or treasure. So that usually comes in the form of either liking the show, leaving comments below, sharing our posts on social media, obviously following us on particularly Instagram is probably where we're the most active. But you can also support us by, in the show notes down below, there are some crypto addresses that you can send us some cryptocurrencies to if you want to support us financially so we can keep investing in the show, because this actually does cost, I know it's a little bit, you can see my real shitty bookshelf behind here that I should actually clean up one day, but then the boys just rip it apart, so it seems a little bit of a frustrating exercise. But you can also support the show this week by, if you've got some old shiny Pokemon cards that you're willing to give me to bribe my son to do things and to act right, please let me know. Shoot me a DM, probably on Instagram, and I can organise to pick them up.
Yeah. They are... I think they're too good for your kid because they're like actually worth money.
Yeah, I know. That's also why I'm trying to get my hands on them. They won't all go to him. Some of them will go straight to Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. We picked up another couple of followers on Rumble, which is nice. Yep. Thank you. We basically increased our views. I don't know if you noticed, but we're now on YouTube as well. We're trialing YouTube again. We got essentially 50% of an uptick on YouTube.
Yeah.
Be careful in the comments. I noticed bots are in the comments. Oh, yeah.
There's bots having conversations in the comments, which is probably great for engagement, to be fair.
Yes, but be careful.
Yeah.
We won't be in the comments soliciting anything.
Yeah.
And don't fall for the trap that's on there. Whereas Rumble doesn't seem to have that problem.
Yeah, we will never ask you for anything in comments particularly on YouTube. Anything that we want, like those crypto links, for example, will all just be in the show notes, so that you can't edit those show notes or anything like that.
Yeah.
We'll never ask you for anything in the comments.
We'll ask you here.
Yeah, look, if you do want to actually contact us, if you want to have, just join the conversation and obviously speak with other viewers or listeners, the comments is a great place to go. If you want to talk to us on the show directly, Instagram direct messages are the best way to catch me, because I'm on there all the time.
But send us some crypto.
Yeah, support the channel.
I've got a little bit of an anecdote about it. I was having beers with a guy, and he just had to send it's like 10 grand or something overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going, oh man, it cost me a fortune. I had to do this. I was a muck around, took 3 days and blah, blah, blah. And I just so happened to be updating my BitKey. I realized I haven't used my BitKey. And I was like, I'm actually going to utilize it because I had probably too many funds in one wallet that doesn't have the same levels of protection.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So for those that are watching, BitKey is a product made by Jack Dorsey's company Splock, not Splock. I was going to say Square. They used to be called Square. Now they're called Block. So those like basically every single payment gateway at every cafe that you've ever used uses a Block product.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jack Dorsey's a massive Bitcoiner, and he's created essentially a 3-factor authenticator for Bitcoin. And by 3-factor is you've got fingerprint access to your phone, you've got a secondary dongle that uses an NFC chip that you have to swipe on your phone to register it, and that's also got its own fingerprint thing on it as well. It's a very beautiful device, and I've had mine for like probably 2 years now, and I haven't. I was actually part of the pre-order,
mm-hmm.
so I think I paid double what you paid. Nice. But I hadn't used it anyway. So while I was sitting there having beers, I was actually I was updating the software on it, and I thought, how about I just, while we're talking about sending money, how about I just send mine from one wallet to another? $100,000 cost $2 to send.
Nice.
Took 30 seconds.
How good is that?
Right. He had to send 10 grand, cost hundreds of dollars, took 3 days.
And this is what Alex was talking about last week when he was talking about like real investments and the benefits of Bitcoin as opposed to something like housing or gold. If you want to move countries, Bitcoin is you can take Bitcoin anywhere with you in the world. It is the easiest asset class to transport in history, and the most secure.
Yeah, and unlike property, which has got, or your superannuation, which governments just have their greasy mitts on it.
Mm-hmm.
They get to decide what they want to do with it. If you have a property in Melbourne now, and you've just copped another rate rise, there's
land tax rise,
interest rate rise, land tax rise,
mm-hmm.
or your council rates, all those things you have to pay, because if you don't, they take the house off you.
Yep.
Well, there's no ongoing costs associated with holding Bitcoin.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Let's get into the first article. Can you go to the Trump admin?
No, can I do bit?
Yes. Sorry, do your Bitcoin bit first.
So first of all, the Bitcoin conference is on in Las Vegas right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be over the next couple of days. There is heaps of speakers. All the videos are live on YouTube. I recommend people go and have a look at them. There's some great speakers, like JD Vance, who was like the keynote speaker for it.
Yep.
And I guess what I'm trying to illustrate is, here we go, here's a list of the speakers. JD Vance, Ross Ulbricht, I haven't seen that one, I'll watch that one. Ross Ulbricht, who was the Silk Road guy who has been in jail for the last 15 years that Trump pardoned. Michael Saylor, the list goes on, or added back. He might be a potential Satoshi.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Nakamoto, yeah. I would tell anyone if you've
Peter Schiff speaking.
Yeah.
Peter Schiff hates Bitcoin.
He hates it, but he realised that you got to be on the bandwagon, even if you're smacking the bandwagon, you're hating it.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that keeps him and his company relevant.
Yeah, and the thing.
Now, I have to say, everything he says is right, except it's like Joe Rogan, except his
stance on Bitcoin. Yeah, he's a gold maximalist, and look at the gold price; it's absolutely killing it at the moment. So he was correct about gold, but he was just
but not
wrong about Bitcoin. Oh yeah, in comparison, he's dead right.
Vivek Ramaswamy, who else is notable? Really notable. But these talks you get heaps of value out of it. Oh, Brian Johnson, he's the guy that's trying to not die of old age.
Yep. I
Donald
follow
Trump
him on Instagram.
Jr., Eric Trump. So you got two Trumps speaking.
Where's Barron? Can we speak to Barron?
Yeah, Barron might be.
Ask Barron what the price of Bitcoin's going to be in 30 years' time. He knows. He's been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Who else?
For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, then Barron Trump is a time traveler. That's yeah. just so you're aware.
I recommend everyone who's partially interested should go and watch some of these interesting speakers. But there you go, Ben Askren. going to be talking about CTE and Bitcoin.
In Van Askren's defense, I don't think he's got any CTE because he was such a good wrestler. He has won multiple fights without him being touched.
Okay, there you go. This guy Bruce Fenter looks like he's got CTE. No, and the reason, I guess what I'm trying to illustrate here is like, when I got into it in 2017, Mum thought I was in a cult.
Yep.
Now you've got the Vice President of the United States of America as a keynote speaker at our event.
Mm-hmm. It's mainstream, baby.
Like I said to the guy in the gym last week, or the question I asked, what does it need to do to convince you that it hasn't already done?
Yeah.
It ain't going away. I had a girl say, I can't help myself. I had a girl in gym say, I hate Bitcoin. And I said, it's a very strong stance to take on something you know very little about.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, I like tangible things, like cash and money. And I'm like, oh, so you use cash at the coffee shop all the time, do you? So, well, no, I use a tap and go on. Right? Bank account. Okay. And she said, it's a very straight white male thing. And I resisted the urge. In my head, I had the response. I didn't say it. But in my head, I was like, straight white men build everything. Everything you know, love, and everything that's in society right now, everything that's in your sphere of influence, all the most critical parts of infrastructure, common law, straight white male.
Now, ladies,
the financial system,
ladies, for a start, calm down, because I know you're getting all uppity about what Alex is saying right now. But you need to understand that even though straight white men built everything that has any value in the world, we did it for pussy. It's the only reason why straight white man's ever done anything was for pussy. So this is all because of you. Ladies, you built the world.
But my argument to her would be like, essentially, if you think that's a derogatory thing, then you should give up all the things that were made by straight white males. Like justice system, common law, police, defense forces, government, nation states.
Does she have a boyfriend?
Cars, no.
I hope she ends up with a straight white male. And you can
I mean, straight white male is the best, by her rationale, it's the best vehicle for prosperity.
You know she'll end up getting a straight white male with a Bitcoin tramp stamp.
Yeah, I booked it to get it. So it's interesting. Oh, and I've had other girls say the same thing, like, oh, I'm always sus on crypto bros. Like, why?
Because you got too much money.
Yeah, you should be sus on people that are like, I only put my money in the bank. And Jason didn't want to bring this up. Well, if anyone wants to, okay, here's my challenge for people during the week. Ask yourself a question and then go do the research yourself. Mm-hmm. If you weren't satisfied with what you got, reach out to us, and if enough people ask, I'll do a presentation on it next week.
Mm-hmm.
But ask, do you know where money comes from? So not how you earn money, but how money enters the Australian system.
Yeah, you're speaking specifically of Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does it... So ask yourself that. If you don't know, go and have a look.
So I know the answer, and I know that at least 50% of the audience won't know the real answer. And to that...
I reckon 95% don't know the answer.
Yeah, you're probably right. And to those
I reckon people in the financial industry don't know the answer.
And to those people, what I would say is, number one, if you find the real answer, the answer will surprise you. And number two, when you find the real answer, a lot of other things about our country will start making a lot more sense.
Yeah, totally.
It's one of those jigsaw pieces that when you stick it in, the whole picture starts to make more sense.
Whilst we are speaking about the old bitty, where is my nice chart? So let's go to the Bitcoin live price right now. It's down a little bit. We are at 106,000 US dollars. Still, if I extrapolate that out over the year, still up 58% for the year.
Yep.
Let's just check just make sure that all time it's up 181 million %. So, just keep that in mind, y'all. 74 out of 100, so we're in the greed zone. So people are buying, they're getting greedy. Still up. Tesla is still whipping it for the year. Heaps of space in the Bitcoin price prediction thing. What else? Profitable days. There's 4 days. 4 days where you could have made a loss if you essentially bought 3 days ago and then sold it today. So get amongst it. Ask yourself the question about the money.
Yep.
I think there's a way, I reckon I could explain, if I was given time with this girl, I think I could convince her to get into Bitcoin without ever mentioning the word.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see how you could do that, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, do the exercise, guys. Reach out to us if you want more information. And if we do get enough people reaching out going, I just don't know, Alex can actually come up with a presentation. We can run that next week because it is super interesting. And like I said before, it's that jigsaw puzzle piece which will really let you see the reasons for so many of the decisions that get made in our country that make zero sense to us on a day-to-day basis. Let's go to some US politics which directly affects us in Australia. Now, leave that for the end. We've got some Australian government further gaslighting us with vaccine misinformation, which we're going to get to. But just on that point, because this sort of segues into the Bitcoin thing just briefly. So that girl's sentiment you were just talking about, how she is like wary of like crypto bros. So a crypto bro, especially a Bitcoiner, they're just the same as an anti-vaxxer. They're just the same as someone who doesn't think that we should be transitioning children's genders.
Someone who grows their own food.
Yeah, they're just the same as someone who, thinks...
has a gun.
Yeah, thinks that the climate hysteria is a bit overblown. It's all of those things, and all it is it's just another case of someone being willing to step outside the norm and go first. And look at what happens when people do that. Like Bitcoin, if you stepped outside the norm and you went first, you're up millions of % on your investment. If you stepped outside the norm on the vaccines, you're probably a lot healthier today than a lot of people who didn't. And this data that we'll get into after this story, because this one's a quick story, will display some of that. It's really, really important because all of this stuff comes down to one aspect of the human condition, which is critical thinking as opposed to peer pressure. That's all what this is about. And if the crowd is telling you to do something, that usually means that the crowd is being told by someone who benefits from you doing the thing that the crowd's telling you to do. Just keep that in mind. It's a really good way to keep yourself safe in life. But let's have a read of this. This is a bit of an unrelated story, but I think it's quite amusing. The US is to penalize foreign officials who censor US companies and citizens. The Trump administration has criticized countries for restrictions on expression, even as it cracks down on dissent at home. Now, I got this story from Al Jazeera, so it's a pretty balanced article. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said the US will place new visa restrictions on foreign officials who censor American companies and citizens abroad for speech protected in the United States, warning that demanding greater content moderation by US social media companies is unacceptable. In quotes, I'm announcing a new visa restriction policy that will apply to foreign nationals who are responsible for censorship of protected expression in the United States, Rubio said in a statement on Wednesday. So, Alex, can you think of some people that might fall under these new visa restrictions off the top of your head?
Well, the one thought that I kept on having was actually the opposite of that, and it's the Telegram guy that's sitting in a French prison for having a censor-resistant application.
Yep.
Could there be protections given to him?
Well, I think that would be part of diplomatic relations between the US and France for locking him up, but the thing that stands out for me immediately is that our entire government will probably be restricted from entering the United States. We've got, our government continues to sue X over X not pulling down posts online.
Yeah.
So, so this is... this is again something just the reason why I wanted to bring this up. The US is the most powerful country on the planet and has ever been. They are our number one ally. Whether you like Trump or not, whether you like America or not, the fact remains we are a minnow in terms of size and power when it comes to the global economy. The US is the big dog. We should be friends with the US. It is good for us to be friends with the US. What our country is doing is the polar opposite. We are actively antagonizing the US because of ideological reasons that go against ours. However, at the same time, our country is allowing US countries to still rape and pillage our natural resources and pay us no tax. So it's not all, like, so if you're an ideologue who's like, I hate America, I hate Trump, therefore I support the Australian government being antagonistic towards them, that would be fine as long as they were also real. Yeah, if it was real, because it's not. Yeah. Like we are like all of those big corporations they talk about not paying tax in this country are US corporations who are stealing our natural wealth and not paying us anything for it. So you got to remain consistent, right? The administration of US President Donald Trump has frequently depicted social media content moderation policies as a form of censorship targeting conservatives and has criticized foreign governments that encourage such policies. In quotes, even as we take action to reject censorship at home, we see troubling instances of foreign governments and foreign officials picking up the slack, he said. In some instances, foreign officials have taken flagrant censorship actions against US tech companies and US citizens and residents when they have no authority to do so, i.e. Julie Inman Grant, who, funnily enough, is a US citizen. Rubio, who has helped spearhead a crackdown on international students who speak out against Israel's war in Gaza, did not name any foreign officials who the policy would target, but the administration has previously criticized countries such as the United Kingdom, Germany, and Brazil on those grounds. In quotes, foreigners who work to undermine the rights of Americans should not enjoy the privilege of traveling to our country. Whether in Latin America, Europe, or elsewhere, the days of passive treatment for those who work to undermine the rights of Americans are over, Rubio wrote in a post on X. So, can you see, because I do think that's a fair point, do you see the difference between, because they're referring to, I think they're cancelling visas of a lot of foreign students who've been protesting in American universities. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that juxtaposition?
My gut is not to like it because you're supposed to have the freedom to protest. Mm-hmm. But I can also see there's an argument that could be made as like, well, if you don't like it, leave. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I do think people should be able to have their voices heard. I also think that it would appear that pro-Israel people aren't subject to this. So if there's hate speech towards Palestinians, it doesn't seem to be equally distributed. And therefore that's like an ideological approach. So I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of this.
Yeah, I've struggled with this a little bit too because at my core, I do believe that free speech should be an inherent human right, and it's the only way that we can move forward in civilization. However, I also think that the rights of citizens supersede the rights of foreigners. And if you are not a citizen, not a citizen, because this is what they're cracking down on. It's not US citizens they're cracking down on. It is foreign students who are going to American universities and then basically protesting against America. And like, if you just put the shoe on the other foot and you put it in an Australian context, I don't think that foreigners should be coming to here and enjoying the lifestyle, the education, all of those services that our society provides, and then criticize the very country that they're in. I don't agree with that either. And when we talk about social discord and social cohesion and all of those things, I don't agree with having people here who are blatantly upsetting the apple cart at the same time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a tricky grey area.
It is a tricky one. But when now that you put it that it's only, like, it's a privilege to be in that country as a foreigner, not a right.
And like, you have to you sign an agreement when you get your visas that you're not going to do those things. Like, I was listening to Tim Pool was talking about it the other day, And he looked at the nuts and bolts of it, and he goes, what people don't even realize, because they haven't had to go through the process themselves, is that a lot of these foreign students, to get a visa in the first place, they actually sign a document saying they will not protest. So if it's part of a signed agreement on your way in, well, you are reneging on the contract. And and there is no right to be in a country that you're not a citizen of. Whether that's America, whether it's Australia, whether it's any other country around the world.
I would argue, though, that those people that are subject to these laws don't believe there should be borders at all.
Yeah, for sure. But, like, again, you have to put the shoe on the other foot, too. And because I know there'll be people listening to the show who will be criticizing me right now for my stance on this because it's imperialist and whatever. And that's totally fine. I encourage you to go to, say, a deeply Muslim country and criticize Islam and see what happens. Like, they would do far worse to you than kick you out of the country if you did those sorts of things. So, unfortunately, I think it's a respectful thing, as we are we're all global citizens now, right? The world is very small. But I think it's respectful, and I think that most of you, when you really think about it, when you travel to different countries, the vast majority of people who listen to the show, I believe, obey local customs.
Yeah.
Right? It's the respectful thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. Like, why would you go and get yourself into trouble in a foreign nation where you have no rights? It doesn't seem like a good idea. So you have to apply that same thing in this scenario. You know, you have to be consistent with it. So anyway, I just thought that story was really interesting because this is another example of Trump literally trying to do what I believe is the right thing to do around the world. Like, governments should not be censoring their citizens. And this is him actually doing something about it. And they mention the UK because we know the UK is very extreme. Like, there's this famous interview, Konstantin Kisin interviewed a former Australian politician, John Anderson, and asked him the question, like, do you know how many people, and this interview was like 2019, 18 or 19, I think it was, and he goes, do you know how many people Russia arrested for social media posts last year? And he didn't know. The answer was like 300. And he goes, do you know how many people the UK has arrested for social media posts? And he goes, I don't know. It was 4,000.
Yeah.
That was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
You think it's gotten better or worse since then?
Yeah, and it's funny too because it's that assumption of the West being free and liberal, and it's not real. You know, and it happened here in Australia too. We have the footage of that lady getting her house, her doors kicked in, and arresting a pregnant lady in her pajamas for a social media post.
Correct. And like, so another, this is sort of without notice, but another little thing came up this week, and I saw a lot of my friends who do lean left, like, celebrating about it, and it was the story of the Tate brothers, Andrew and Tristan Tate, have been charged with, like, sex crimes in the UK. And they're all celebrating, going like, yeah, finally, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, have we... I know that the Tate brothers, they're not the best people in the world, right? Do not take this as me thinking that they are completely above board. But have we not seen this over and over and over again, where the easiest playbook to discredit and silence powerful men who go against the system is to accuse them of sex crimes? The most noted example is Julian Assange, who just got out of prison. Well, not prison, sorry, but who just got out of exile, that he was locked in for 20 years because the US government tried to use fake sex crimes to put him in jail, all because he leaked US government wrongdoing in war.
So I just watched an interview with him on the Disruptors podcast. I really like that. I've forgotten his name, but I really like that show. Mm-hmm. And he thinks it's all because he was throwing his weight behind Nigel Farage and his political movement, and he was willing to come to the UK.
Sorry, are you talking about Julian Assange still, or Andrew Tate?
Andrew Tate.
Right, yeah, makes sense.
Andrew Tate was willing to go, and he said, I will get every young man in England to vote for him because I believe in everything that he's saying.
Yep.
And then now the establishment has come in, and they said they can't get me for tax because no one cares.
Yeah.
But what they do care about is sexual impropriety.
Correct.
Same as Russell Brand got done. the same thing, right?
Yep.
So you just hit them with, and then it's like Trump, right? Every woman hates Trump because of pussy grabbing.
That's right. And most women, if they were in the room with a billionaire, would let him grab your pussy. Like, be real, girls. But like, even so, I posted this up on Instagram. I think it was yesterday. Democrats, in quotes, working out is right wing. Liking hot girls is right wing. Eating red meat is right wing. And there's got pictures of the news articles where like MSNBC, News Nation, Newsweek have all posted up articles with those headlines and going into them. And then it's underneath Dems today. We need $20 million to understand why young men hate us. So yeah, of course, someone like an Andrew Tate, if he goes and look, Nigel Farage is against the establishment. If Andrew Tate vocalizes that he's going to go to the UK and get all young men to vote for Nigel Farage, he'll be able to do that. And then all of a sudden, there's more sex charges against the Tate brothers. Like, it is just the oldest playbook in
Do you know what the sex trafficking charge is for?
The particular UK ones?
Well, the UK ones will be the same as the Romanian ones.
The Romanian ones were about the cam girls, wasn't it?
Yeah, so...
Which is a legal business in Romania.
But it's not that. So the technical side of it is, if you bring someone across state borders for sex or sex work, that's sex trafficking.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Now,
same as all those girls that were brought to Epstein Island. That's sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Don't see the media talking about that at the moment, funnily enough.
Yeah. Now, those girls did it to make money.
Mm-hmm.
None of the girls have reported, like, it's not the girls that are making the claims of this.
Yeah.
It's the government.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And essentially anyone that's got a private jet that's brought a lovely lady of the night across into a different country has committed this same crime.
Yeah, correct. Was it Karl Marx who said, like, you show me the man and I'll show you the crime? Was that the quote? Where essentially they're just saying, like, if there is someone that either I do not like or is getting in the way of the movement, I will find a crime to get rid of that person.
Yeah.
And we're doing it again.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to the point of that article about the Trump administration, they are trying to make sure that your government can't lie to you. Like, you should at least appreciate that. That is what they're trying to do. And it could have some, there's financial benefits to these giant American corporations if countries all over the world stop finding them and stop putting pressure on them and stop kicking them out of the market. And yeah, there's going to be some dollars and cents that will benefit. Elon Musk will benefit from it. Yeah. Oh no, Elon Musk will benefit financially from this. It's the right thing to do. Your government shouldn't censor you. And like Alex said at the start of the show, we, for the first time in 2 years, uploaded a video to YouTube this week. Because we were being kicked off YouTube for violating their medical misinformation policy. The episode, so I was talking to a friend of mine the other day because he messaged me out of the blue and he says, do you take ivermectin? And I said, I don't. I'd like to, but I've just never really got around to like trying to access some or whatever. And we were talking about it. And then it just brought me back to a whole bunch of things like a lot of the information that we've discussed on the show about ivermectin, about how effective it was, about how in April 2020, Channel 9 News reported a study out of Monash University that showed that ivermectin killed COVID-19 cells in vitro. Like, we knew it in April 2020 that ivermectin was effective at killing COVID cells. And look what happened to ivermectin. And the thing I'm so proud of with our show is, in 5 years ago, we went first, we went early, and we stepped outside the norm. And we told you that about ivermectin potentially being an effective cure or even a prophylactic for COVID-19. And now that's proven to be true. And we told you that we didn't trust the vaccines. And we're about to get into a story which will show you even more that we were correct about that as well. We told you 4 years ago when it hit an all-time high to buy Bitcoin, and it was 22,000 Australian dollars. Now it's down today. It's 164,000 Australian dollars. You'd be up 140 grand if you bought a Bitcoin 4 years ago when we told you to. A lot of these things that we say on, and this is one of the difficulties for us with growing the show and building the audience. The vast majority of our audience are closet listeners.
Yeah.
And I know that because they message me.
Yeah.
And they discuss things from the show, and I know you guys really appreciate the information. I know that you guys, a lot of you have done extremely well out of some of the information that you've gotten from the show. But you are closet listeners because we talk about things that aren't mainstream, which cause awkward conversations.
You're not allowed to say it. The stuff that we say, you're not allowed. The social
price is too high.
The social price is too high.
That's right. So, again, the lesson that we all need to learn out of all of these situations, but particularly COVID, is the only way that things get better is if you guys have some courage as well to get this information out to people who clearly need it, because you clearly take some value from it. So be courageous. A courageous thing to do is to have these conversations with friends of yours that you don't think that are going to agree with you straight away. But like Alex is talking about this girl from the gym, he thinks that he'll be able to turn her onto Bitcoin, even though her current position is, I hate Bitcoin, and I don't even know why.
Yeah.
Right? Alex is being courageous. And who's going to win out of Alex turning this girl onto Bitcoin? Her buying some Bitcoin might push Alex's portfolio up by a Satoshi.
$1.
Yeah, maybe.
Less.
Maybe,
yeah.
Probably less. But she will win, because in 4 years from now, when we're talking about Bitcoin on this show, and the price is 400,000 Australian dollars, and we'll be saying, hey, if you bought when it was 164 grand back in 2025 when we told you to, you'd be up $200,000 today. And then everyone in 4 years from now, all the normies will be going, oh, it's too expensive. You're buying at the peak. You're buying at the peak. You're crazy, mate. It'll fall. You're crazy. Because that's what the media
will be like,
yes,
I'm still buying.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I just wanted to say.
I do want to credit one of the other girls in the because I was at the gym this morning, and again it was just me because I'm a true believer, and I'm grinding and
on the gain train, son.
Trying to get my lifts up. Yeah. She keeps asking the right questions, which is, what do I do about it? What do I do about it? So that's a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Blind resistance is not smart in any case.
Yeah.
Even the Andrew Tate topic is great.
Yeah.
That's a hand grenade. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Because people, I hate him. How can you possibly hate him? How can you possibly like him? And like, have you watched anything?
He's a sex criminal, Alex.
I said, have you watched anything that's not a short?
Yeah.
No. Of course you'd hate him.
Yeah, of course you would.
I said, I could clip the things that you say, post it online, and everyone would hate you too.
Yeah.
You're a great person, right? But that's the reality of it.
Yeah,
so you've watched the curated version that's designed to make you hate this person. You haven't watched it.
Mm.
Like, I know very liberal people who have watched a long form version, and the one that I like, the one that I point people to is Andrew Tate on the Your Mum's House podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2 hours long. The first hour is Andrew Tate being the character of Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
It's hilariously entertaining. It's extremely misogynist,
mm-hmm.
right? But it's funny. Then the last hour of it is he sort of pulls out of the character a little bit and really talks about why he does the things that he does.
Yeah.
And anyone who watches that goes, you can't argue with it. Like, it makes so much sense. And I like to show women in particular because they believe that he's weaponized against them. But anyone who has consumed Tate content in long form knows he's aiming at weak men to become strong men.
He's trying
and not to be anti-women,
but
to deserve a better quality woman, to be a better man for women. And
he's literally trying to lift the quality of the talent pool for women to choose from. Like, that's part of his goal. Like, one of his main messages, and it's correct, and it's something that never gets spoken about to young men these days, but young men need to understand it. The world does not care about young men. It never has, and it never will. The only thing that the world cares about...
I can prove it. We built a whole society, and then it's used as a derogatory term, straight white males.
Yep.
As a derogatory term.
Yeah, who gets sent to die overseas in war? Young men, right?
Yeah.
It's the way it's always been. The world has never cared about young men. All they care is about what you can do for them. And that's the reality. And again, like women, ask yourself this. When you were 18 years old, were you going for an 18-year-old guy or were you going for a 25-year-old guy? Because a 25-year-old guy lived out of home, had a car, had a good job, had money. He had more to offer you, right? When you were 25 years old, were you going for a 22-year-old man or were you going for a 32-year-old guy who was cashed up, career guy, had been hitting the gym for 10 years, so he was ripped? Like, the world doesn't give a shit about young men. So the reality is, hey, young men, if you want to have a good life, strap in, son. You're going to have to work for it. You have to go out and get it. It's not going to be given to you. You cannot give young men a good life.
Yeah.
They have to earn it. It's the
Bite
fact.
off more than you can chew and chew like fuck.
That's right. And that's the message. And guess what, ladies? That message, which you might describe as toxic masculinity, that creates better men for you.
Yeah.
Because the most toxic men in our society are weak, feminized men who exhibit like the toxic feminine traits men.
What is the line? The sneaky. The guy that's way too friendly with women, like, the men that are marching at feminist parades. I think there's a name for them. Sneaky snakes or something.
Well, they're basically a wolf in sheep's clothing. Like, they're typically men who cannot compete with other men, so they try to trick women and manipulate women into, whether it's feeling sorry for them or it's like a misplaced value scenario, right? So it's like, well, I'm not attractive enough. I can't provide anything in terms of both financially or safety because I'm a little bitch. So I'm going to be an ally, and I'm going to go and march in all of these things, and I'm going to say all of the slogans that these women want me to say, down with the patriarchy and all that sort of stuff. And then, when they get a quiet moment, they slide in and try to make the moves, and then you realize that they're just in it for themselves anyway. Like, I was raised in a time in the 90s where men were taught to be strong men to protect and provide for the women and children in our lives. That is the ethos I've taken through my life. The things that were told to me when I was a kid would be seen these days as toxic, and guess what? They ain't toxic. I protect and provide for my family. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine during the week, and pedophilia came up. Great subject. And here's one for you parents out there, which I don't know if I've mentioned on the show before. I think I have. We were talking about pedophiles, and there was a documentary done on pedophiles. Can't remember what it was called, but they interviewed one of the most notorious, prolific pedophiles in American history.
Oh yeah.
Who was in prison, and they interviewed him. And they asked him, they said, what do you, like, as a predator, what do you look for in these kids? And he said, the kids don't matter. They're all the same. What I look for is the dad. Number one, is the dad even around? Number two, if he is around, is he a threat? And if the dad is around and he's a threat, I leave those kids alone. Like, let that sink in.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
So, like,
makes sense.
For me, like, with our family situation, it's worked, like, not because of this, but it's worked out in a way where the vast majority of kindy and school drop-offs and pickups, I do. And I'm telling you right now, as a dad who believes in protecting my family, I'm more than happy to do every drop-off and every pickup. Because guess what? There are creeps out there. And it's like that old saying of, like, the only thing that can stop a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun. Well, the only person who can stop, like the wolves, we spoke about that analogy the other show, where it was like, you got the shepherds, you got the sheep, and you got the wolves. Guess what, guys? Just because you see the best in everyone doesn't mean the wolves aren't out there. The wolves are out there. And the only thing that stops the wolves is the strong men. Yeah. In every society in history, that's been the way that it has been.
It's a straight white male thing.
It's a straight white male thing. It is the strong men in society who are willing to do the right thing, even at great personal cost to themselves. And again, I don't want to toot our own horn, but that's what we've done on this show. Like, one of the most controversial episodes that I've ever done was when the Australian government approved the vaccines for kids, and you were away for the week, and I did a solo show, and it was titled "Should I Vaccinate My Children for COVID-19?" And I copped so much heat for that episode because at the end I went through the data that was available. I went through all of it, and at the end of it, I said, based on the data that has been supplied, there is no credible reason to vaccinate your kids for COVID-19. I did the right thing to try to protect your kids at great personal cost to me. Got us kicked off YouTube.
And this week, in the United States, they've just changed the recommendation to exactly what you said.
Yep, the CDC has just removed COVID vaccinations from the recommended vaccine schedule for children and pregnant women. And do you know what the big ramifications for that are? Because everyone's like, oh, well, if it's just not recommended anymore, they can still go and get it. Yes, you can still go and get it. If you're a liberal parent and you want to go and vaccinate your child, you still can. But the big difference is, and this is the insidiousness of Big Pharma, if it's on the CDC recommended schedule, the government pays for it. If it's not, you have to pay for it. So now Big Pharma loses one of its giant income streams because you had the FDA and the CDC marketing a private business's toxic medical product to you, so you're paying for the marketing for them to market the product to you, and then your tax dollars are paying for the product as well. And they're getting rich.
Don't forget, your tax dollars were also the thing that made it, and your tax dollars were also the thing that made COVID.
Correct.
So don't forget that either.
And I've got to give a shout out to the strong, straight white men who stood against that, like your Jared Rennicks. And look what's happened to him. He's lost his seat in the Senate.
Yeah.
So he's lost a $200,000 a year job. If he just kept his mouth shut during the pandemic, like every other politician did, or the majority of them did anyway, he'd be on $200,000 a year for the rest of his life, and he'd be on a defined benefit pension scheme. So he would, when he retires, he would end up getting about 40% of that as every year as a pension. So 40% of $200,000 without fail every year as a pension, not means tested, like a lot of these other politicians are. Craig Kelly, he was another one. He tried to do the right thing. He became a laughingstock of Australia, right? He did the right thing. He was correct. He was right about everything that he said.
Yeah.
Because he looked at the data. He did the thing that we talk about that we do. We looked. He did the right thing. So you got to shout out the men who put...
The renegades.
The renegades who do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And look, no one's perfect. None of us are perfect. We're not saints either. And we're going to make mistakes. But the reality is, there are people around you in your life who try to do the right thing. They try to. And that's all you can ask for. And those are the people that you should be idolizing, looking up to. I mean, I don't believe in idolizing anyone, really. You know, they always say don't meet your heroes because you'll end up becoming very disappointed. But even like the Tates are a perfect example. Look at the shitstorm that the Tates have put themselves through over the last few years. And it's literally for, like, look, number one, they're trying to make money. And they make lots of money. Great. But same as Trump didn't need to put himself through everything he's been put through the last 4 years.
He got shot in the head.
He almost got assassinated.
Yeah.
But he kept doing it because he's a true believer. He was trying to do what he believes is the right thing to do. And guess what? The dude's grabbed some pussy in his time as well, so he ain't perfect. But you got to give credit where it's due, guys.
I just also think too, because I had a conversation with a viewer of our show, and he asked an interesting question, which was like, do you let this stuff get to you? And isn't it okay for people to have a different thought? And I said, you can differ on an opinion if you've looked at the facts.
Yeah.
So what I don't cop is, I disagree with you. I'm not going to look.
Yeah.
I can't justify why.
Yeah.
It's what you say makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Therefore, I disagree with you. I don't accept that.
Yeah.
That's bad thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's not being objective. Okay, so if your argument is grounded in objective reality, we can absolutely have a conversation. And if you can convince me, I'll change my mind.
Yeah,
okay?
totally.
But if you're saying that's not true, I don't like it, I don't believe that, I hate Bitcoin, right? That doesn't fly.
Yeah,
That's bad thinking.
I totally agree.
You've used a poor data set to make a very definitive comment.
And that's...
So I've had conversations with people before where the way that they responded, they kept on saying, well, I feel that, I feel that, I feel that. I said, okay, let's stop. Because we're talking about something that I have way more knowledge than you do.
Yep.
You're not allowed to give me your opinion. You're only allowed to ask questions. And we actually got somewhere really good. So they went, oh, okay, well, how does that fit with blah? Or how does it da-da-da? Or explain this part to me. And then we actually found a place of truth.
Yeah.
But the automatic response is to just respond. You're not even listening to the case. You're just like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And a lot of the subjects that we touch are completely uncomfortable because you've been programmed to think the opposite.
Mm.
And you can tell it's programming because you don't even know how you got here.
Yeah,
you don't even know the justification for it. That's why the money thing's really big.
Can we, on this note, because it's directly relevant, can you bring up the Dystopian Down Under article? Because this is exactly why this happens. I think that's a perfect segue into this. All right. So she just released this today, so the 30th of May. Useless COVID data analysis riddled with basic flaws. If the vaccines were so effective, why do governments have so much difficulty producing the evidence? A new analysis by the Australian government comparing COVID outcomes between vaccinated and unvaccinated Australians was an opportunity to finally provide evidence for repeated claims of the effectiveness of Australia's vaccine rollout. But basic flaws render the analysis virtually useless, adding to the pile of bad data that authorities continue to pull from to justify their ongoing promotion of the COVID vaccines. So this is what we're saying. The majority of people during COVID felt a certain way about the vaccines, felt a certain way about the virus. But there are no foundations to the way they feel. And that's on purpose because those foundations don't exist. And let's read on. The report, Hospitalizations and Deaths Following a COVID-19 Diagnosis from 2020 to 2022, a linked data analysis by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, AIHW, is the first official report to link data on infections, hospitalization and deaths stratified by age and vaccination status from most states and territories. Until now, federal, state and territory governments have steadfastly refused to release linked real-world data to support their claims of COVID vaccine effectiveness, blocking freedom of information requests and claiming in court to have erased the data so as to not have to hand it over. Instead, authorities relied on modelling and overseas studies to support their claims, regardless of whether these findings translate to real-world outcomes on the ground in Australia. During the pandemic, and as reported on the show, New South Wales Health was the only government department in the country to regularly publish COVID hospitalisation, ICU and death data stratified by vaccination status, and these reports showed a strong association between more shots and worse outcomes, while in many weeks not a single unvaccinated person was hospitalised with COVID at all.
Now, we did we were keeping an eye on Gibraltar. So Gibraltar had a 140% vaccination rate because it only has 30,000 people in the whole country, and their COVID death rate just went up and up and up. And then we looked at our own data. The more vaccines we had, just the more deaths that we had.
Yep.
Until that wave finished, there was and people were raising this in the public sphere, and they came back with the same thing: correlation doesn't equal causation.
Yep.
That was the answer.
That's right. That's all they could say. Don't worry about the graph. Keep going. Okay. Note that the above graphs show representation in hospital and death outcomes by vaccination status per million people in the population, not raw number, thereby avoiding the problem of base rate fallacy. So do you know what a base rate fallacy is?
No, I don't.
A base rate fallacy is essentially when people assume something happens a lot more than it actually does, and it's pretty easy to disprove as long as you have the real raw data. So I actually looked up the Wikipedia for it to try to sound like I was smart before the show. And the example they use is, let's say that you have a friend who is extremely shy, and you ask, hey, do you think it's more likely that that friend is going to become a librarian or a salesperson? And the majority of people will say, oh, well, they're super quiet, they're not very outgoing, so they'll become a librarian. However, when you look at the real world data, there are far more salespeople than librarians.
I see.
Right? So therefore, based on statistical analysis, it is impossible that it was more likely that they'll become a librarian because there are far less jobs available. Right?
Yeah.
So that's called a base rate fallacy.
Interesting. I like it.
Yeah. However, New South Wales Health's failure to stratify by both vaccination status and age made it impossible to tell if the terrible outcomes for the vaccinated were due to negative vaccine efficacy, as it appeared, or if other factors were at play. Coupled with Australia's record high excess deaths, which started clocking up around the same time as the COVID vaccine rollout, and at least half of which could not be explained away by COVID infections, the lack of hard proof for claims of vaccine efficacy in the Australian population left an information vacuum fast filled by speculation. Ideally, this new linked data analysis by the AIHW would finally put such speculation to bed, but it doesn't, and it can't, due to the same miscategorization errors that have plagued a multitude of COVID-era studies, making the findings not only unreliable, but potentially dead wrong. COVID-19 hospitalization rates were 4 times as high in unvaccinated older people than those with 3 or more doses. And these are quotes from the article. And another quote, across all age groups, COVID-19 case fatality rates were lower among people who were vaccinated. However, these claims cannot possibly be drawn from the AIHW analysis because, number 1, vaccinations weren't counted until 14 days after administration.
Which we tracked from the get-go.
Which we told you on the show. Number 2, an undetermined number of people with unknown vaccination status were counted as unvaccinated. And number 3, people who had opted out of sharing their vaccination status with third parties were excluded from the analysis altogether. Per the technical notes at the end of the report, in quotes, the data on COVID-19 vaccination status in this report was based on the Australian Immunisation Register in the COVID-19 Register. The AIR is a national register that records vaccines given to all people in Australia, including people enrolled in Medicare or people who had a vaccination record transferred from recognised vaccination providers, such as a GP or community health centre. This report considered COVID-19 vaccination status based on the total number of COVID-19 vaccination doses recorded 14 days or more prior to a COVID-19 diagnosis. This is to account for a vaccination taking 14 days to become effective, based on studies showing that a single dose of vaccine offers some protection around 2 weeks after vaccination. This means that the zero-dose category in the AIHW analysis included anyone who had not had a dose, who had 1 dose up to 13 days prior, and whose vaccination status was not recorded or matched with their record in the AIR, i.e. vaccination status is unknown. Additionally, anyone who had previously opted out of sharing their information with a third party was excluded from the analysis. I confirmed with the government that this interpretation of the AIHW methodology for determining dose status and inclusion in the analysis is accurate. The first error alone, counting the newly vaccinated as unvaccinated or less vaccinated, can make a placebo or even an ineffective vaccine appear effective in observational studies, according to mathematician Norman Fenton. Now, we have played that video on the show before, years ago. It's a great video. I do encourage you to go and look at it. I'll put a link in the show notes for it if you do want to go and see it, because literally using the same misinterpretation of the data which we used in these trials, you can literally make a placebo look like it's 95% effective, just using these data methods. The confounding effect that this and similar miscategorizations can have on misrepresenting vaccine effectiveness has been documented in numerous peer-reviewed articles, with effects estimated to be as high as 50% to 70%. This kind of categorization error hides any negative effects that may occur in the first 14 days after receiving a shot, while at the same time artificially inflating the incidence of those effects and any other negative outcomes in the group that has fewer or 0 doses. So a perfect example of this, everyone knows when you get a vaccine for anything, you feel like shit for a couple of days, don't you? Because your immune system is teeing off, trying to fight this thing that you've injected yourself in. Which means you're far more likely during that time to get a real infection while your immune system already has pressure put on it.
Yeah.
So all of those additional cases which were probably caused by a downregulated immune system from someone being vaccinated are now recorded as unvaccinated cases.
Yeah.
As a majority of Australians received their first vaccine dose before COVID was circulating in the community, this methodological flaw is unlikely to have skewed the COVID hospitalisation and death outcomes in the analysis too greatly as far as comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated goes. It would likely have a greater effect on reported outcomes by dose, where newly boosted people are treated as having fewer shots than they have actually had. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yep. So obviously, if it's not 14 days after the booster,
Yeah, doesn't count.
That's right.
Well, remember on the news they were saying if, like, I think Victoria was the worst for it. If you haven't had all your booster shots, you are unvaccinated. Your class is unvaccinated.
Correct.
Yeah.
However, the second and third errors, counting some people with unknown vaccination status as unvaccinated and excluding an undetermined number of others who had opted out of information sharing, are likely to have had a profound effect on the outcome of this particular analysis, maybe even enough to completely invert the reported outcomes. During the pandemic, most state governments using data from the AIR put hospital patients with unknown vaccination status into the zero-dose/unvaccinated category for reporting purposes. This resulted in headlines to the effect that a third or a quarter of people in hospital were unvaccinated, giving the impression that the unvaccinated were vastly overrepresented in hospitalization and death statistics, and feeding into the public shaming of the unvaccinated as a burden on the healthcare system.
But hold on. Wasn't 96% of Australia's population double dosed?
Yeah, apparently.
So that stat can't be right.
Well, we'll get to that. This was pure misinformation, or disinformation if you believe the reporting error was deliberate. Simply by looking at the fortnightly COVID surveillance report, which we used to do, before they stopped doing them, just so you're aware, of the only state that published COVID data with the zero-dose and unknown categories separated out from each other, New South Wales, it was easy to ascertain a few salient facts. Number one, on any given week, those with unknown vaccination status accounted for around 1 in 4 of those hospitalised with COVID. So unknowns were a much smaller group in the death rate. Number two, initially, i.e. in the first several months of reporting, so remember, this is between 2020 and 2022. The vaccination rollout didn't begin until February 2021. So you got a first year of every COVID case is unvaccinated.
Yeah.
Right? Initially,
I have to take. Do you want to take this and then finish it? This is the call.
This is the call that you need to do. Yeah, that's cool. So we're going to say goodbye to Alex at the moment, and
but you won't be able to scroll.
It's all right. I'm just going to bring it up on mine. I'll stop recording. I'll bring it back up. So Alex, thanks for your time. Good luck, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, I'm back. So you've just got me, so apologies if this sounds different or looks a bit different or is a little bit funky, because I just had to quickly set up a new scene for myself. Good luck to Alex. He's got a big deal that he's working on at the moment. Okay, let's continue on with this, because I do think it's really interesting. So yes, on any given week, those with unknown vaccination status accounted for around 1 in 4 of those hospitalised with COVID. Initially, in the first several months of reporting, the unvaccinated fared worse in COVID hospitalisation outcomes and fared fairly equal in deaths to the vaccinated. As the rollout progressed, though, the unvaccinated fared much better compared to the representation in the population, with 0 unvaccinated COVID hospitalisations in some weeks. Conversely, those who had received more boosters fared considerably worse, being overrepresented in COVID hospitalisations, ICU admissions, and deaths most reporting weeks. So thanks to ex-user at LCHFMatt, uploading the fortnightly New South Wales reports is into, so there's a live chart that you can access. The public was able to visualise these outcomes. What we see is that the unvaccinated are underrepresented on a per capita basis in hospitalisations, ICU admissions, and deaths, while the more shots a person has, the more likely they are to be hospitalised, admitted to the ICU, or die with COVID. Evidently, bucketing unknowns in with the unvaccinated grossly skewed the reported outcomes from other states, giving the false impression that the unvaccinated were flooding hospitals, when in reality, after an initial round of infections, they were mostly doing much better than the boosted. Moreover, excluding an undetermined number of opt-outs from the data messes with the denominators for COVID outcomes. Services Australia, which manages the AIR opt-outs, advised by email that 230,490 people have opted out of third-party information sharing as at the 27th of May 2025. I'm one of those people. A number equating to just under 1% of the Australian population. If we could guarantee that the unknown opt-out subjects were evenly distributed across age and vaccination status, this would not be a problem, but we have no way of knowing the distribution of these opt-outs. So, anyway, she goes on to talk about unknown skewing the data, etc. But there is an interesting point here too. So, for example, in 1 week, cross-referencing of New South Wales data confirmed that all cases in the unknown category were double or triple vaccinated. In the latter quarter of 2021, New South Wales Health reported that most unknowns would have had at least 1 dose. Cases between October and mid-December with an unknown status are likely to have received at least 1 dose, but their record could not be matched with the AIR. We don't know how many in the AIHW's dataset were of unknown vaccination status, since under its methodology, the AIHW had no way of identifying this group, aside from excluding the opt-outs. So what we can take from the AIHW report? Not a lot. In light of these basic miscategorization errors, what can the new AIHW report actually show us about COVID outcomes in the vaccinated versus unvaccinated? Not a lot. These errors alone could account for the fact that the AIHW's analysis produced the total opposite outcomes to the New South Wales health data. Still, even if the AIHW had avoided those errors, the analysis would be of little use value. The AIHW assessed only hospitalizations and deaths due to and with COVID, loose definitions requiring a COVID diagnosis of up to 14 days prior to or 2 days after admissions for hospital. Capturing stays of overnight or longer to exclude same-day discharges indicative of mild disease, and coding indicating that COVID was an underlying or contributing factor for the deaths. However, the appropriate way to assess vaccine outcomes at population level is to analyse all-cause mortality, and that's the big key thing that hasn't been mentioned up until now. All-cause mortality and hospitalizations, as this is the only way to capture non-specific effects of vaccination. If, for example, COVID vaccines are associated with a 3.7-fold increase in cardiac events, as was the case in the Pfizer trial, then the vaccine cannot be said to improve health outcomes overall in the vaccinated population. The opposite is true. An analysis focusing only on COVID-related hospitalizations and deaths will fail to capture this full picture. Australian data scientist Andrew Madry has detailed further problems with the AIHW report on his Substack DataWise. And look, it goes on to talk about it being a house of cards and etc. We don't need to continue on. I do encourage all of you, please follow Rebecca Barnett. She's one of the best investigative journalists that we have in Australia. She is like a dog on a bone when it comes to the COVID story. We reference her all the time on the show. She is one of the GOATs. If you want to get this sort of information early and first, instead of getting it from us, go and get it directly from her. Like, she's a great follow and she deserves your support. But here's the key point. This is so we're talking about earlier on in the show, and I'll wrap this up soon because it's not the same show and Alex isn't here. But what we were talking about is this. At the time that all of this stuff was going down, there were certain people in your society that were telling you to potentially be wary that people in power may be lying to you for some sort of alternate reason or a different cause. And unfortunately, the COVID pandemic, and more importantly, the government response to the COVID pandemic, mirrors so many of the different psyops that have been fed to us in the past. The point being that the data that is required to convince the majority of the population to go the opposite way to the official narrative only comes out 5 to 10 years after it's far too late. So the war on terror, perfect example. That was our big wake-up call. Alex and I mention it all the time. We bought into the war on terror. We saw September 11. We lived through that when we were teenagers. It was a massive deal for us. And we were told about these weapons of mass destruction that Iraq was holding on to and, was going to be an existential threat to us all. And 5 years after that war kicked off, it came out there were never any weapons of mass destruction. All it was a scare tactic meant to justify an invasion of a foreign nation, and it's resulted in a 20-year occupation of Afghanistan, millions of innocent people dead, and for what? Money. It's what it all came down to. The vice president to George Bush during their invasion of a foreign nation was Dick Cheney, and for any of you who know the story, Dick Cheney was on the board of a company called Halliburton, which got the non-compete contracts to rebuild the nations that he was authorizing the US military to destroy. He made billions of dollars out of that conflict. Millions of people died. Billions of taxpayer dollars from all of us were sent in aid of that conflict and ended up in the pockets of Halliburton and the weapons manufacturers. COVID was exactly the same. What's the end result of the COVID hysteria that we copped from our governments for at least the first 2.5 years? What's the end result? Well, we're still reporting COVID cases in the community. Therefore, the vaccines didn't stop COVID. We have massive excess deaths primarily in 2021 and 2022. And why is that significant? because that was when the vaccine rollout was at its strongest point. That is when the majority of the people who took vaccines were taking them and getting boosters and taking them every 3 months like they were told to. That directly correlates, vaccine uptake directly correlates with the excess deaths that our country experienced. And funnily enough, if you look up the excess death data now, it started coming straight back down again as people have stopped taking the vaccines, even though COVID's still in the community. And you can argue herd immunity and stuff all you want, but I would put to you that COVID, even early on, was just like a cold or flu. And as we reported on the show, it was the interventions from our medical system which actually caused the excess death rates from COVID early on. Using drugs like remdesivir that had a 30% death rate for anyone that hospitals put on it. Most of you would remember from early in the pandemic all the talk about ventilators. Oh, we need to get more ventilators. We need to put people on ventilators. So what they would do, the protocol was, you had a COVID patient, usually an older person, and if your oxygen saturation got too low, they would put you in an induced coma, put you on remdesivir. Remdesivir affects your kidney function. Your kidneys is what your body needs to get water out of your system. And then they put you on a ventilator. And what would happen to these people it was nothing to do with COVID. The remdesivir was affecting your kidney function. They had you hooked up to a saline bag to make sure you stayed hydrated. Your kidneys couldn't clear all the water out of your system, and the ventilators started pushing that water into people's lungs. And the majority of the people who died on ventilators died from drowning because of remdesivir. It was the protocol, not the disease that killed these people. And funnily enough, we ain't ventilating people anymore for COVID. Weird, hey? Weird how that changed. So look, I'll leave it there for this week. Obviously, Alex, it's a shame that he couldn't be here to finish the show, but hopefully he has a successful outcome with his phone call that he just had to take. And guys, I really appreciate you all for being here. I don't say it enough. We did this because we thought it was the right thing to do, but honestly, it is an honor and a privilege to have the amount of people that listen to the show, that view it on Rumble, that send us stuff. I know it's a community full of closet listeners, but I think that a lot of you who do listen to the show are some of the best people that I've ever met, and I appreciate you guys for being here every single week. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.